The following presentation is funded in part by Centerstone. Hello, and welcome to this communication education session on the impact of COVID-19 on brain health, presented by the Brain Health Initiative for Centerstone patients and clients. I'm Dr. Shelley Carson. I'm a scientific director of research at the Brain Health Initiative, and I'm a psychologist, researcher, and lecturer at Harvard University's Department of Psychology and School of Continuing Education. If you're diagnosed with COVID-19 while managing a mental health condition, you're not alone. A large study of over 62,000 COVID-positive patients in the U.S. last year found that about 25% of them had a mental health diagnosis. From this study and others like it, we've learned a great deal about what symptoms, practices, and behaviors are more likely to increase risk for more severe COVID issues and also more severe mental health issues. In this video, we'll present some of this information as well as some tips on how to minimize the negative aspects of your COVID experience. We've divided this information into 3 areas: communication with others, self-care, and stress reduction techniques. Let's start by looking at communication. First, communicate with your healthcare provider. One thing we've learned from this past year is that a substantial percentage of people who are diagnosed with COVID-19 symptoms don't fit the classic respiratory profile of fever, shortness of breath, cough, and fatigue. Communicate with your healthcare provider if you experience any symptoms that are outside the normal profile. By spring of 2020, it became apparent that many people were experiencing neurologic as well as respiratory symptoms, but many weren't reporting them until they needed to be hospitalized. The most common of these neurologic symptoms included these: anosmia, which is the loss of sense of smell; ageusia, which is the loss of sense of taste; headaches; muscle pains, dizziness or incoordination; difficulty concentrating and mental confusion; or difficulty waking or staying awake. We know that these symptoms can occur at any time during the COVID infection and are often present even before other symptoms are apparent. Because these symptoms represent an unusual presentation of the coronavirus and may have implications for how your case is treated, you should contact your healthcare provider right away if you notice these symptoms. It's also important that you stay in regular communication with your mental health care provider and continue appointments and care as usual, although this may occur through telehealth appointments until you're free of COVID. Make sure to let your mental health care professional know if you sense any worsening of your existing symptoms, especially anxiety and depression, any new symptoms, and changes you may have noticed in your thoughts, tendencies, or behaviors. For example, do you have the urge to engage in risky behaviors like speeding? Are you taking any new substances? Do you have the urge to harm yourself? Your mental health professional won't judge these behaviors, and they may be related to COVID, so it's important to share this information. Communicate with your pharmacist. Do you have enough of your prescriptions to get you through your quarantine period? If not, do you need help getting the prescriptions? Most pharmacies can help with this. Don't delay getting your prescriptions because you can't pick them up. Finally, it's really important to communicate and stay in touch with family, friends, and neighbors while you're in quarantine. Just because you're in isolation doesn't mean you need to be isolated. Social isolation is one major risk factor for worsening of mental health issues, so make a plan to have frequent contact with others. We recommend at least once daily contact and several times a day with multiple people if you can arrange it. You can create a call sheet where you schedule calls with family and friends so you're sure to have someone to talk to each day. Make appointments a week ahead of time with family and friends so they'll be available to have the conversation. If you're too weak to call them, have them call you and make it clear they'll need to do most of the talking until you regain your strength. You can also take advantage of one of the web conferencing platforms that allows you to video conference with others, such as Zoom or FaceTime. Join a web-based group if you feel up to it. For example, there are a number of book groups online that anyone can join. Or if you're really ambitious, you might sign up for a class online. There are many free classes available. Some have a conference component available where you can interact with others. A 2018 review article by Wang and colleagues found that social connections and social support was one of the most important protective factors against worsening of mental disorders. You can be quite creative in your socializing even during COVID quarantine. Another way you'll protect yourself from worsening outcomes is through good self-care. This means trying to eat right, get some exercise, and good sleep. If you're feeling sick with the virus, it's unlikely you'll have much of an appetite. Hydration will be the most important aspect of your diet. However, if your symptoms are mild, or when you begin to recover your appetite, here are some positive changes to try. Increase your fruit and vegetable intake. Try to drink at least 2 more glasses of water per day than you generally do, up to 8 per day. Try to eat less refined sugar in the form of candy and baked goods like cookies and cake. Try to add legumes or beans at least once per week. When you're feeling better, you can attempt more substantial and lasting changes. Your healthcare provider will likely have given you instruction about exercise. If you have permission, getting some exercise, even if it's indoors, can be very beneficial for reducing stress, anxiety, and depression symptoms during your bout with COVID. It's also helpful for getting sleep. Walking or marching in place, yoga or Tai Chi are some options. Are you sleeping? Many people find that when they're first diagnosed with COVID, they sleep a lot and then have trouble sleeping. An Italian survey found that 57% of respondents reported poor sleep since the pandemic began. Some tips for good sleep if you've been diagnosed with COVID include trying to get up at the same time each day. In other words, try to keep a sleep routine. If you feel sleepy, go to bed earlier in the evening rather than sleeping during the day. Our sleep experts say that a 10 to 20-minute nap is fine, but long sleep during the day interferes with sleep rhythms and makes nighttime sleep more difficult. Other tips include turning off electronic devices 1 hour before bedtime to reduce blue light, avoiding alcohol in the hours before bedtime, and practicing mindful meditation to calm the mind. Speaking of alcohol, most people who are sick with COVID don't want to drink. However, if you have an alcohol use disorder, you need to know that heavy drinking and respiratory illnesses are not a good combination. Past research has shown that people who are heavy drinkers are more likely to need ventilation during severe respiratory infections. If you have an alcohol disorder and you've heard that alcohol is protective against COVID, that's because there is some research that indicates in mild to moderate doses, Alcohol is a protective factor against getting the virus. However, once you've contracted the virus, alcohol becomes a risk factor for more serious illness. Finally, consider adding meditation or mindfulness practice to your daily routine. Mindfulness has been shown to literally change your brain in positive ways that increase resilience. Another factor in reducing risk for negative COVID-19 outcomes is keeping stress under control. In several studies, people with high levels of stress have been shown to have more severe symptoms of the disease and longer duration of symptoms. Stop and take a stress check a few times a day. Try to get a feel for where you are on the stress thermometer on the right side of this screen. The goal is to recognize when you're beginning to feel stressed so you can manage the stress response before it hijacks you. Once you realize you're overstressed, take a revive break at the earliest possible time. This is a short period, a minimum of a half hour, that allows you to calm down and de-stress so you can think clearly about how to reduce your stress load. During the revive break, you shouldn't think about your stressors. You should just allow yourself some tranquility. Here are some recommendations for the revive break. Consider meditation, yoga, listening to or playing music, reading a good book, writing in a journal or diary, taking a long hot bath or shower, among other suggestions that we've mentioned here. Again, the revive break is a half hour or so of pure de-stressing. Once you've revived, you can think rationally about what might be causing your stress. First, define, preferably in writing, the main causes of your stress. Put a check mark next to those stressors that you have some control over. One example that many people who have COVID are concerned about is infecting a loved one that they may live with. Pick a cause that you have some control over and then make a plan to deal with that stressor. A plan that you can begin to implement as quickly as possible. The very act of making a plan often reduces stress and anxiety and gives you the sense that you're not helpless. Taking the first steps toward eliminating or neutralizing a stressor is empowering, even though the stressor may still temporarily be in your life. Another important factor in reducing risk, based on published studies, is to limit your exposure to COVID-related news sources. While it's important to have up-to-date and reliable information, spending too much time on social media and cable news sites has been shown to be a risk factor for anxiety and depression. Checking in with government websites such as the CDC or National Institutes of Health once a week is a healthier option. Maintain a routine. In times of uncertainty, a steady daily and/or weekly routine is very reassuring that there's still some stability to life. Try to go to bed at the same time, try to eat your meals at the same time, and do some routine activities at more or less the same time each day. We've already discussed the importance of exercise. It's an evidence-based treatment for depression. So get exercise to the extent that your healthcare provider and the severity of your COVID symptoms allow it. The last factor for stress reduction we'll discuss is striving to increase emotional well-being. Positive feelings and emotional well-being have predicted longer life, reduced heart disease, diabetes, stroke, and reduced overall death. Of course, they also are associated with lower depression and anxiety rates. Now, of course, it's easy to say that we'd like emotional well-being, but when you have COVID and mental health issues, how do you do this? Here are some suggestions from the research. First, spend more time doing things you love and less time doing things you dread. Can you replace 1 or 2 hours a week with something you really love doing, and then another 2 hours the next week? Can you schedule this into your calendar? Second, laugh, and laugh often. Research shows that even forced laughter can improve your mood. In India, they have laugh clubs that meet mornings before work. People get together and laugh, even when it's forced laughter. Laughter releases positive chemicals in the brain that enforce health benefits. Make a compilation of happy memories, either in a journal or in a computer file that you can flesh out and add details to as you remember them. Then read your list on a regular basis. In the gratitude list practice, you write down between 3 and 5 things in your life, large or small, that you're grateful for several nights a week. Even with COVID, there are still many things you can find to be grateful for. In studies where this practice has been done nightly, it's been shown to increase emotional well-being extensively enough to be noticed by others, and as an added bonus, to improve sleep quality. The point isn't to be happy and joyful all the time, but rather to insert moments, maybe leading occasionally to hours, of well-being into your life so that the scales of positive to negative moments gradually begin to tip more toward the positive. This increases healthful outcomes for both your brain and your body, and it's possible for everyone to achieve, even if you're currently experiencing depression, anxiety, or stress-related disorders along with COVID. Now let's review what we've discussed in this video. First of all, you're not alone. And there are many things you can do to help yourself have a more positive outcome from COVID. Communicate any change in your mental or physical status to your health care providers. Have daily contact with friends or family, and don't self-isolate. Bolster your self-care through good nutrition, exercise if possible, sleep, and mindful activities. Reduce stress by turning off the news and engaging in reviving activities. There are things to be grateful for even in the midst of the pandemic. Focusing on gratitude rather than bitterness or threat improves health. Having COVID along with mental health issues is not easy, but research is showing us that you can take charge of many aspects of your condition. By bolstering self-care, reducing stress, building social connections, and increasing emotional well-being even in small increments, you can improve your brain health and conceivably come out of the experience of COVID with strength and resilience. For more information on brain health, please visit the Brain Health Initiative at www.brainhealthinitiative.com. Thank you. I'm Dr. Shelley Carson.